What's up, guys? So today I wanted to talk about how I went from living my dream life as a full-time entrepreneur to having to go back to a 9 to 5. So I will say that it was a very humbling experience for me, and I want to share my story. At the time, I was in college, and I had other contracts in the past with companies like Google. I worked for a subcontractor that had a contract with Google and some other companies. I did all kind of things like customer service, administrative work, and etc. And that was like around 2013, 14, 15-ish. I was working all those different kind of contracts, like doing customer service and all the other things like I just said. And I was making like around $10 an hour, some of them like $15 an hour. And I could make my own schedule and everything. So yes, I was a self-employed contractor, but I was still making like average income. Like I was able to pay my rent, my bills and things like that, have a little bit of money left over. And I was a college student. So I was just still getting by. And one of the contracts that I was working at the time was about to come to an end. So I started looking for more work, hoping that I could land another contract to where I could just make my own schedule like the other contracts that I had in the past. But I was also applying to like 9 to 5 jobs because I just needed some income to come in. And I end up finding this opportunity where I was able to land another contract, but it was something that I had never done before. I had never done tech support before and didn't have experience in tech support, but I decided to give it a shot because it sounded like something that I would be interested in doing, which was troubleshooting software on cell phones for customers. And I took the assessment, ended up landing the contract, and this contract was a little bit different from my other contracts that I had because in my other contracts, I got paid hourly. And this one, I got paid per ticket. So that was different. But I still was only expecting to average maybe about, $15, $20 an hour. A little bit more than what I was making, but still like an average pay. So when I got a few weeks into getting familiar with the role, getting comfortable with it, I end up making way more money than what I thought I was going to make. So my life changed instantly. I initially thought, and I may have said it in one of my other videos, I initially thought that I was averaging about $30 to $40 an hour. But with the way I was working, I was making like $70 an hour. I ended up manually calculating it. I'm going to have to start keeping notes so that I can be very accurate with the information I'm telling you. But I did some calculations and it averaged at $70 an hour. Y'all, I started this contract, I want to say it was like around maybe like sometime around the middle of 2016. I had this contract for exactly, it was like around 2.5 years. And y'all, at the time, I want to say, let me see, I was like 23-ish years old, like between 23, maybe coming up on 24-ish years old at the time. And that was life-changing money for me, y'all. Like, I was able to live it up. I still did for a while. I would say for about close to a year. It may have been a little under a year, but it was close to a year. So where I had ended up eventually getting this car that I have now, and I paid my baby off. So yeah, for a while, even though I was bringing in some real good money, I still drove my raggedy little Honda truck for a while before I just jumped into another car. So I will say in that way I was smart. And then at the time I was also still living in my townhouse. So even though I could have at the time, like a few months in, I could have easily said, okay, I want to move somewhere else. But something told me just stay in this townhouse for a while. And it was an okay area, but stayed there for a while. Just, I was stacking up a little money, some, but I could have stacked up more. But the mistake that I made, y'all, was I went shopping all the time. I was going out to eat all the time. Just recklessly spending money. Like, I was saving money, you know what I mean? But I could have been saving way more. And I was just doing what I wanted. No budget, no nothing. And then so eventually I had ended up getting a new car. I would say like a little bit into almost a year into having this contract, end up getting my nice car. I already told y'all that, but yeah, got a decent car that I was happy with. Put down thousands of dollars on the car, so that way I wouldn't have a high car payment. And now my baby's paid off. I'm sorry if I already said that, but I just want to make sure I'm not leaving anything out. And then, eventually, like within a year and a half into doing the contract, I ended up finding out that I was pregnant. That was May of 2018-ish. And I was so fortunate because I was able to have a very flexible schedule, so that way I wouldn't be stressed out completely during my pregnancy. Like, I had a peaceful pregnancy because, like, if I ever felt sick, I wasn't obligated to have to work. I didn't have a work schedule. It was like a 24-hour thing, so I could literally work when I wanted. So that was very good for me at the time. And so the whole time I had flexibility. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I said, okay, I need to move into a bigger house. And so I moved out of my townhouse, ended up moving into my dream neighborhood, my dream house. And I was like, just living it up. I had so much financial freedom. Like, I was able to do what I wanted, when I wanted, all that, whatever. And then a few months after I found out I was pregnant, I ended up graduating college. So I was able to start, working even more on my contract. And I mean, it was really good, y'all. That's all I can say. It was really good. I had a lot of support. So I was like a tier 1 tech support person working tickets. And we had like tier 2 tech people that would help us if we needed additional assistance on troubleshooting the software. And then, so like, it was really good, you guys. Like, it was like a really true blessing for me to just be able to have so much freedom. And my little brother was even seeing the lifestyle that I was living at the time at a very young age, and he wanted that same thing, and he asked me if I could put him on, and I didn't know if it was going to work out, but I knew he was so smart and he was really good at technology. The boy even hacked my computer when he was in elementary school. So he gave it a shot and he got put on too. He got accustomed to living that type of lifestyle, which is why he never wanted to really work a job. He got a taste of it at 18 years old, making the same kind of money I was making. Rest in peace, bro. I love you. Fast forward, I end up having my baby in 2019, January 2019, still working the contract. After I had him, I didn't work for a few weeks, and then I started back working, but I was working very part-time-ish, like super, super part-time-ish. And then eventually I started adding on more time again. And I will say there was only one con with this contract, which was I had to make sure that I kept my rating up on the platform, because if your rating goes down below a certain level, then they would remove you from the contract. But I was fortunate to be able to keep my rating up the whole duration of my contract. And fast forward into September of 20. Oh, and I want to mention this. I was living it up so much, y'all. I was also traveling. I went to Miami, rented a condo at the Fontainebleau. I screwed that word up so bad. It's the Fontainebleau. It's in Miami, not too far from, what do y'all know? If you know the area that I'm talking about, put it in the comments. But it's close. Oh, South Beach. It was pretty close to South Beach. And Fontainebleau is like where all the celebrities stay at. We had unlimited valet parking, and I really got to experience like a life of luxury, like a taste of how it felt to live a luxurious life, like being surrounded around these luxury cars and getting to experience unlimited valet parking with your reservation, and having the opportunity to just blow the money on staying there for a full 7 days. Like, I had it like that. I just said one day, oh, we're going to Miami in a few weeks. Like, I was really living it up, you guys. And so the taste of it was beautiful to be able to do things like that. Or like and then one day I randomly said, hey, I want to go to Universal Studios. Let's go to Orlando. Drop the money on that trip like it was nothing. Like, it was so freeing, you guys. Oh, I miss it. But I'm going to get back to that level where I'll be able to do stuff like that again. I'm going to speak that over my life. But moving fast forward, around September, around September, yeah, it was around September of 2019, we got an announcement that said in 1 month, our contracts were coming to an end. We had a 1 month notice. Like I said, you guys, I was living it up, shopping all the time, dropping money on trips like it was nothing, living the life. And I was still saving. I'm not saying that I blew all my money. I was saving some, but I wasn't saving as much as I really could have saved, if that made sense. Oh, and also, I wasn't putting money aside for taxes. So when I got those tax bills from the IRS, that was not a good feeling. But yeah, we got the notice to where our contracts were coming to an end. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It was such a big shock because I was not expecting that. And why would I not expect that? I should have been expecting it would happen eventually, because that's what happened with all the other contracts I had. But I just got too comfortable. Let's just put it like that. I got too comfortable. And so that was a big shock to me. My life completely changed again. I went from having this contract, making an average of $70 an hour, not even having to work full time. And if I did work full time, I would have averaged about 120, 130K a year. I literally lost my dream life instantly after that contract dropped. And I end up, when I got the notice about the contracts coming to an end in a month, thankfully they gave me a notice, because a lot of the other companies didn't give me a notice like that, or a way shorter notice than that. So when I found out about that, I end up going back to some of the companies, just going back, applying to jobs, as well as going through some of the companies that I used to contract in the past to see if they had any new opportunities available. And I ended up coming across one contractor that had some new opportunities available. So I end up going back to that, and it ended up paying me like, I want to say like $10, $12 an hour. And to go from making $70 an hour, averaging at $70 an hour, to making, and like I said, I was working like part-time. So to go from that to $10 an hour, if you could imagine how that felt to me emotionally, the emotions I felt with going back to a contract to where I was making $10 an hour. My life changed instantly again. Thankfully, I bought a car that I had put thousands of dollars on, so where I would not have a high car payment. So for one, that saved me. I am glad that even though I wasn't saving like I should have, like I was saving, but I could have saved way more. I could have been stacked. But I said, thankfully, I had the mindset of, I'm not going to buy a car that I can't afford if I ever lose this contract. So thankfully, I had a low car payment. My car is now paid off. I still have this car to this day. And then even though I moved into my dream house, my dream neighborhood, which was what was my dream neighborhood and house at the time, even though I lost that contract, well, the contract came to an end, to this day, I still live in that house. I still was able to, now I will say I was barely making it. It was hard, but I still live in this house to this day. I was able to still pay all my bills. It was just hard, you know. I didn't move into a house. Moved into a nice 3-bedroom house for my son, a nicer 3-bedroom house for my son than when I was in the townhouse. But I didn't get something that was way, way too high to where if I said, because that was the mindset I had when I moved into this house. I said, this is my dream house. That was my dream house neighborhood at the time. But I said to myself, this is still something affordable to where if I ever, well, it wasn't the most affordable, but it was still an okay price to where if I ever lost my contract, I still would be able to make the payments to stay in this house. And it's still, I would be on the edge, but, because I could find another contract like that or another job easily or whatever. But I just knew with making $10 an hour, I still was going to be struggling, but I could still stay at the house, if that makes sense. So I'm glad I had the sense enough to not get too expensive of a car, got an affordable car, and still got something that wasn't way, way overly too expensive as far as my living situation. And so, like I said, end up landing the contract, making $10 an hour. Then while I was doing that contract, I end up landing another contract on top of that. So I was working like 2 contracts at one time, to where I was able to bring in some extra money along with that. And with that contract, I looked up on that contract because I was doing like little projects where I was making like, let's just say they sent me a project to work on, like an administrative project. And while I was working that $10 an hour contract, I was doing that administrative project. And the administrative project, let's just say, for example, if I worked on this Excel sheet of tasks that I had to work through and rate, I had like 900, whatever amount that I had to rate. I'm thinking about the amount that I got paid, but whatever amount of tasks I had to rate in that Excel sheet and work through, I would get paid a certain amount per thing I rated or whatever. And so I would make like, I know one time I made like $900 in 3 days, but I only worked on the Excel sheet for like an hour a day or so. So I did have another contract on top of the $10 an hour contract, to where I was bringing in like per project, on a per project basis, I was bringing some other money in here and there. But it wasn't like I was making like on the other contract that I was working on top of the $10 an hour contract. It wasn't like I was bringing in that extra $900 every week or something. It may be like 1 month on that extra contract on top of the $10 an hour contract, I might bring in an extra $900 for that month. I think that was the most I ever made on a project for them. Or I might bring in an extra $200 for that month, or an extra $300 or $400. You know, it was like that, but it wasn't like consistent, you know, like a consistent big amount every month. And so I did what I had to do to survive. I was struggling, but I still was able to pay my bills. And so that was a very rough time for me. And this was right before 2020 hit. I got to a point where I started budgeting like a few months after I lost the contract, and start doing like way lower paying work. Use the Every Dollar app, and I've been budgeting ever since. So I've been budgeting since the beginning of 2020. And y'all, you know how people like lost jobs and were dealing with financial strains right at 2020, like after, you know, what happened after that hit. I was dealing with it right before 2020 hit. And so that was a very emotional time for me. It was hard for me, but I pushed through, and I learned a lot of lessons. The first lesson was, don't live it up like I was doing. Be more financially responsible. Make sure that I have a set budget that I go by every month, so that I can know where all my money is going to. Pay myself first, and don't depend on, when I go back into my entrepreneurial journey, don't depend on just one source of income. So I think that's why after I lost this big contract that I had with this corporation, I think that's why when I got after that, and when I transitioned into going back to an old contractor, to where I was making $10 an hour again, that's why I decided to get another contract to work along with working that contract, if that makes sense. So I was working 2 contracts at the same time, bringing in a few sources of income. Like in one of my contracts, I think I was doing tech support, but just wasn't really getting paid like that. And the other one, I was doing like administrative support. Like I said, when I was telling y'all about the task that I had to do, and I was making like bringing in $300 here or $400 there or $900. That was like, I think the 900 was like one time, but it just taught me to not put all my eggs in one basket, have multiple sources of income. And then eventually I got so tired of the inconsistency with that particular contract that I had, where I was, I mean, it never was consistent, but it got worse. The administrative contract that I had, they were bought out by another company, and that new company that took over wanted to pay us like pennies on the dollar. And I said, I'm not doing that anymore. And then I got sick of dealing with the $10 an hour contract. So I end up transitioning back into the 9-to-5 life. I really didn't want to do it, but I just felt like I had to get some sense of consistency again. And that was a nightmare. That 9-to-5 that I had was a nightmare, but I had a consistent income and was able to pay all my bills comfortably. And also with the big contract that I had, the big tech support contract that I had, where I was answering tech support tickets, the one that was bringing me in like $70 an hour. So I end up finding out that after they dropped all of our contracts, I eventually found out that they end up doing the same thing as the administrative contract that I had with a company. So after they dropped us, they end up rebranding the position, but they end up hiring people as employees at that position. I end up going to their website and looked at their job listings because I think at one time I was like still looking at different jobs or whatever, and looking at 9-to-5 jobs. And so saw that they had my position name on the title, and they were hiring like actual employees to be employed full time, but they were only paying like it was between $15 to $20 an hour. And I was like, wow, that's why they dropped us, because we were making so much money. And they said, hey, we're not paying all this anymore. They didn't get this company, they didn't get bought out or anything, the one that I had the big contract with, but I saw that they did a really big budget cut. So they cut from paying us contractors $70 an hour to wanting to pay hired people and just pay their employees like $15, $20 an hour. Please note, just so I won't cause any confusion, they paid us per task, per ticket, but we averaged at about $70 an hour. So I found out that's why all of our contracts got dropped. But the lesson that I learned is don't have all your eggs in one basket. If you have a really big contract, a good contract with someone, or even if you're just like a self-employed contract with someone, or even if you're just doing your other thing, try to have at least 2 or more sources of income. Don't just depend on one income, even for you YouTubers, whatever you do. I've just learned not to have your egg in one basket. Also, budget. Know where all your money is going, from the dollar to the penny. Make sure you know where all your money is going, and don't live it up like I did. Like I said, I saved some, so that kind of saved me too. I saved a little bit, but not near as much as what I could have saved, y'all. After doing the calculations, like the way I budget now, I could have paid off all my college debt. I could have invested in real estate at the time. There were so many things I could have done. So that was a really big mistake on my part. But I'm glad that I learned at an early age. Like I learned like in my mid-20s. I'm 31 now. So when the good entrepreneurial income comes in again, I'm going to be very smart with it. Oh, and another lesson, your taxes. Y'all, I owed the IRS so much money. I was not even setting money aside to pay the IRS. Like I had tax deductions and things like that, but I was making so much money where I still owed them a good bit. Like I could only deduct so much. I still had to pay out something because I was making a lot of money. And so for a while, it took me years and years to pay that debt back off, like the tax debt. So also just make sure you set money aside for taxes. Work on getting as many tax deductions as you can, and just be smart. Just try to learn as much as you can. Don't make the same mistakes that I did as a self-employed entrepreneur. But yeah, I'm just glad that I had the opportunity to see how it felt to have that ultimate freedom. So that way, when I get this ultimate freedom again, I know how to be way more responsible, you know. So I hope this story helped you guys. I hope it inspired you guys in some kind of way. I'm sorry. I know I was all over the place, but I'm trying to get better at this storytelling thing. So I will see you in my next video.